Welcome back to Benny's Custom Works, proudly supported by Sparesbox. Today we're back onto our VH-45 S13 project. Today we're going to attack all the wiring. We're going to basically strip everything off the engine. We're going to take all the loom off, the inlet manifold. We're going to strip the valley, going to pull the ignition out, all the coils and everything. So basically going to strip it down to a bare long engine. There's heaps of tidying up and stuff to do, and all these vac lines. We can get rid of a lot of that because this is all for emission stuff, and being that this is a track-only car, none of that stuff was probably functioning in the old car anyway. They've just been otherwise occupied. Rather than remove this, they've done other stuff. So, but yeah, today we're going to tackle pulling all that stuff off. We got some fittings to go into the rocker cover to convert to AN, so I can put a better like catch can breather setup in it. We've also got a different filler neck and some other bits and pieces to change around. So, oh, that's had some funky action. So yeah, we're going to pull it apart and move some stuff around, and hopefully by the end of it we'll still have a good working long engine. So let's get into it. I have absolutely no idea what that pipe does. It literally has 2 rivets in the end of it. And oil. Now that we're pretty deep into the valley, there's so much crud and leaves and sticks and stuff. Obviously we've now got open inlet ports, so now's a really good time to give a good clean out. We're just going to suck it out with a vac cleaner. This old thing's been around for a while. We're just knocking in some AN breather adapters. These are pretty readily available for Nissans. As it goes, these are the same as RB or SR ones. The thing I've seen before is people trying to bash these in with nothing on them. Whereas if you just get a blanking cap, they're pretty cheap. I'd recommend every time you buy some of these knock-in fittings, just buy at least one cap. It's just going to save you damaging your fittings. And also you want to put a good amount of sealant around these because they almost rely on the knurl to bite in. But if the rocker cover's not quite the exact right size, they could end up a bit loose. So that second one's gone in pretty tight, but the first one was a little bit loose. So we've knocked both of them in. Obviously there's a fair bit of excess sealant at the moment, but once we get these all in, we'll give them a good clean up. Goo! Some of you guys with a keen eye for detail may have noticed that I used an impact gun to pull out and put the plugs in. I've literally only just bottomed out the plugs on the thread and we're hand checking all of them. I don't recommend just sending them home with the gun, because you can guarantee you'll do that when the engine's out of the car, and the next time you go to change the plugs in the car, one of the plugs is going to be stuck, and it's always going to be the back one. So do yourself a favor, and if you are going to use a gun at all, only just knock them down so that they touch on the crush washer. As you can see, we're not checking the tension, we're actually tightening these home using a ratchet, so saves you a little bit of time whizzing them in, but yeah, definitely wouldn't recommend just bottoming them out with a gun. Now for the fun part, this is a second VH-45. It's very similar to that one, only that this one is broken and it also has a supercharger. So this is I believe, someone will correct me anyway, I believe this is from late model Mustangs. It's a pretty good setup. Previously this combo made about 600 horsepower in another car. Unfortunately, it finally died. I've known about this setup for about 4 years at a guess. I met the guy that used to own this through the VH pages on Facebook. We got talking, we're both kind of local to each other, and we met up when I had the Stadge first going and he had his car first going, and we kind of kept touch ever since. Yeah, unfortunately he's killed this thing, and as a result decided to pull it out of the car and put a different running gear combo in that car. Fantastic timing for us though, because Adam had already hinted that he wanted to go forced induction, and then this thing popped up just at the right time. So now we're basically going to transfer the blower, the manifold, the whole belt drive setup, which works really well on this, over to this engine. The biggest bonus, however, is this setup had a brand new wiring harness made about 2 years ago, which is already terminated for a Haltech Elite 2000, which it also came with. So we've got a full loom, a good ECU. It did come with headers, but I don't think they're actually going to fit the car. So there's tons of stuff this thing's come with. Bigger injectors, a good fuel system, so it already has heaps of braided lines. It comes with a fuel reg and the R35 GTR cores, which we just sneakily slipped into the new engine. So there's so much stuff coming with this for such a good deal. So yeah, we jumped straight on it, and there's definitely a few things that we're going to change the setup of, and some stuff that's not actually going to fit into the Silvia. So yeah, like I said, the headers aren't going to fit, but the lucky thing is this VH setup already was in a Silvia, so these headers will fit. The tubing's slightly smaller, which will restrict power, but in saying that, we're actually going to put a bigger pulley on the supercharger anyway to make less boost, because going from 200 or maybe 200 kilowatts in this to 500 kilowatts in one jump is going to be a big thing, and Adam's not mega keen on just jumping on 500 kilowatts straight away, so we want to make it so that we can kind of just ease into it. I believe there is a pulley kit that you can buy that you press a flange onto the snout of the blower, and then you can just bolt and unbolt different pulleys to it, so that might make it a bit easier if we do want to change it, because currently you've got to use a puller and some other tools to remove the pulley and change it every time you want to change it. Compounded by the fact that this blower, there's a bolt snapped in the end of it, so we'll have to fix that when we change the pulleys anyway, so a little bit of work. We are going to pull the blower off the manifold because this thing's lunched the engine pretty bad, so the one thing I want to check before we go jamming it all onto that is that the blower is actually good. I'm just slightly worried that there could have been a bit of metal come back up into it because this thing smashed a piston, and generally when that happens, it starts to throw stuff back into the intake. The saving grace may be that this was probably under boost at the time that happened, so I'm hoping that it's pushed stuff back into the motor rather than suck it through. But yeah, we'll have to pull the blower off now. We'll pull the belt drive off, we'll pull the blower off the manifold, and then we'll flip it over and have a look into the outlet port, and we'll also check the inlet port and have a good checkup of it, and hopefully it's all happy. I mean, worst case, we have to get another blower. That's not going to be the end of the world. These are kind of readily available, like you see them for sale here and there. I've actually seen them pop up on Boss motors, like the BABF style engines. Empire had one in recently that had this blower on it, so they are available, they're around. So it's yeah, cool little setup, and it all bolts straight onto that, so perfect for us. We don't have to go mucking around doing fabrication and stuff, which the aluminium stuff's still a little bit beyond me. Steel I can tackle, but I'm not super keen on trying to neatly make manifolds and stuff as yet, so it's definitely on the list to do one day, but not quite there yet. So we'll whip the blower off, take the belt drive off, and then yeah, give it a good inspection, and we'll chuck the camera down some holes. Something's definitely come up into it, but I'm not too worried. You can feel even by doing that with the inlet blocked off, it pushes there. It's heavy and it hurts my back. All the dorts. There are a few differences between our VH-45. So this engine here on the left that's broken is a Series 1. So that basically means that it's got one inlet port per valve from the inlet manifold flange down. The Series 2 has an oval port. Ironically, this blower manifold was actually originally made for a Series 2 engine, and the fellow we got it from just bolted it to it because the pattern is the same. It's just basically got a divider in the cylinder head. Apparently these give a little bit more torque, but being that we've got a supercharger on it, it's really not going to be an issue. Like if it was NA, you may worry about this and want to go to this setup. But being that the inlet manifolds actually do interchange, we're just going to whack it straight on and call it done. Obviously, one of these, the driver's side cylinder head's probably damaged anyway. This thing has split a piston through the gudgeon pin bore. I don't know if it's as a result of a gudgeon pin failure or if the gudgeon pin failed as a result of that failure, but there's bits everywhere. We've got a sump full of stuff, but we'll flip this thing over, give it a good clean. I'll actually clean it internally as well before we refit it. And then we've got a few other bits and pieces to swap over from the Valley. We're going to move over the whole thermostat housing because that's been modified. And we're also going to use the crankcase breather system because it's already got some AN fittings on it. So it's nice and easy to just swap that over because we do have a lot of plumbing from this engine, including a catch can. So whether or not we go using that catch can or if we use another one, not sure yet, but at least we've got all of this set up and we know it was working in a car. So we're basically just going to carry all of that across and keep on chipping away. More water, so good. Oh, look at it go. Blurp, just filling up the Valley. We've bolted the blower down, but we have left the fuel rails off because we're going to get the injectors cleaned. I have still tightened where the injector rails are going to bolt because we want it to clamp down nicely and for that sealant to set in the tension position. We don't want it, as much as this is a thick flange and this is a thick flange, you may still find it pulls down and it'll actually flatten off better with some tension on it. So yeah, we've tightened that down to tension without the rails for now, but yeah, we'll swap those back in later once the injectors come back from being cleaned. So we'll keep chipping away. well, that's us pretty much done for the day, but I thought before we packed up and left, I'd show you guys the damage that's gone on inside this. These were parts of the girdle, and that's obviously our conrod. It appears to have actually snapped the rod as well as munched everything, so it's kind of a what came first type of deal. I'm no engineologist, so someone will probably tell us in the comments what that is. So we've swapped everything from our broken engine over to the good engine. All we need to do now is get a couple of accessory belts and we're pretty much good to go. Next episode, we're going to be putting this back in the car. We'll put the belt on it before we put it in the car. We've got some tough mounts coming to replace the dead mounts that are on it now. Jason's identified what was on it and he's got some coming up to us, so that's awesome. Nathan's already got the harness from this donor car. He's mucking around with that at the moment, working out what goes where. We're probably going to add a fuse box to that as well, because currently the donor car that it all came from, that's got a body harness and a body fuse box, which the ECU was controlling the body side relays. So we can't go cutting the donor car up, because obviously that's going to live on with a different driveline down the future. So we'll basically pack up for the day, get those injectors cleaned, get the fuel rail back on, and then we can basically slip the whole thing back in the car and, well, into this car for the first time. Obviously before that goes in, we've got to pull all the SR driveline out. That's still in it. It's not going to have crotchety old intercoolers anymore. This thing's not going to run an intercooler. It does have a 9th injector though that actually sprays fuel into the intake side of the charger. So that should help cool the charge air. So the good thing is we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We know that worked in another car. The setup works really well. So we'll basically whack that in and be skidding everywhere in no time.